Welcome to this deep dive, episode 322 of the AI Brief. I'm Leah.
And I'm Amin.
And our goal today is to give you that essential, well-informed shortcut on the biggest strategic and cognitive movements that are really reshaping the AI industry this week.
We've distilled a whole stack of material. We're covering where the frontier AI intelligence is actually moving, and just as importantly, the staggering financial strategies the giants are using to get there.
Yeah, we've identified three core forces driving the industry right now. First, there's this powerful new race for what's called spatial intelligence.
The next great cognitive challenge.
Exactly. Second, the dramatic financial chasm opening up between Anthropic and OpenAI, which is based on some pretty startling cost projections. And finally, the moment that GPT-5 achieved a breakthrough in structured reasoning by finally cracking a specialized Sudoku benchmark. Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with the physical world problem.
Right. So, what's essential to understand here is that current large language models, while they're brilliant, they've sort of hit a ceiling.
A ceiling how?
Well, they're masters of abstract language, of history, syntax. I mean, they handle the information superhighway perfectly, but they remain architecturally flat. They kind of live in a 2D world of text and tokens.
And I think that's the gap that Dr. Fei-Fei Li, the famed AI pioneer, is really highlighting in her recent work, isn't it?
It is.
She's pushing the industry to move past just language and focus on spatial intelligence, building systems that don't just describe the world, but can reason about it, interact with it, and even generate 3D environments that obey physics.
Precisely. She argues that this spatial understanding is the cognitive core that lets us bridge AI from being a conversational tool to becoming, an active agent.
So it's about intuition.
It is. LLMs fundamentally lack that intuition we call perception. They can't accurately estimate distance or motion or even causality in the real world.
So if you ask one, what happens if you drop a bowling ball on a glass table?
It's just guessing. It relies on its linguistic training data to guess, not on an actual internal physics model.
So the solution being proposed are these world models. But that concept, it needs a bit of a deeper dive itself, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
Because world models aren't just about rendering video.
Yeah.
They require generating realistic 3D environments, perceiving actions within them, and then predicting how those worlds will change over time based on consistent physical laws.
And that's the big challenge, I assume.
And that's where the challenge lies. Training these systems needs vast amounts of multimodal, physics-consistent data. You can't just scrape the internet for it.
Right.
The industry needs synthesized data from massive physics engines, and that has to be coupled with real-world, messy, robotic interaction data. And Lies World Labs, alongside efforts at Google and Tencent, they're all aggressively pursuing this because cracking the physics challenge, that means unlocking true general-purpose AI for fields like advanced robotics, scientific discovery, and engineering design.
Which makes you wonder, if the biggest problem is teaching AI how to reason about a dropped ball, how far along are we on just structured logic?
A great question.
So let's connect that spatial challenge to our second cognitive breakthrough, looking at the limits of pure mathematical logic. We're talking about the Sudoku bench.
The Sudoku bench, yeah. It was designed by Sakana AI, and it's significant because it's not just a standard Sudoku test.
It's harder.
Much harder. It tests the limits of deep, multi-step structured reasoning. It combines classical puzzles with novel rule sets. It really demands long-chain logic and creativity, kind of simulating that blend of knowledge you need for truly complex problem-solving.
And GPT-5, the newest model from OpenAI, it finally achieved a pretty long-awaited milestone here.
It did.
It's the first model to fully solve a 9x9 Sudoku puzzle within the benchmark. And that confirms these latest models are just significantly better at spatial and logical sequencing than their predecessors.
The jump is dramatic.
Right.
I mean, across the entire puzzle set, GPT-5 achieved a 33% solve rate.
And to put that in perspective,
That's roughly double the rate of the previous leading models. So this confirms serious progress in the core architecture's ability to handle structured constraints over, long processing horizons.
but I think the sobering reality is that 67% of the puzzles are still unsolved.
That's the key takeaway.
So why are these last few puzzles still tripping up a model that can write code, analyze dense papers, and pass bar exams?
Well, the unsolved puzzles require two inherently human skills. The first is what we call meta-reasoning.
Okay, what's that?
It's the ability not just to follow rules, but to learn new rules on the fly and then adapt your core strategy instantly.
And the second skill?
Creative break-in.
Yeah.
When logic hits a dead end, a human might try a creative, non-obvious hypothesis. a strategy that breaks the pattern to open up a new logical path. The models, they still struggle to generate these novel solutions when the deductive path is just blocked.
That distinction, that inability to creatively break a pattern, it really highlights the enormous financial investment that's required just to incrementally close these cognitive gaps.
Which brings us to our third major theme,
Mm.
the sheer cost of this competition. If achieving structured logic is this expensive, what's the cost of chasing AGI?
The financial divergence between the industry giants is really the story of the week. The cost of training and running these frontier models is colossal, and Anthropic is projecting a disciplined, cost-efficient path that stands in stark contrast to OpenAI's aggressive spending forecast.
And when you look at the projections, I mean, the numbers are almost unbelievable. Can you walk us through the scale of this gap?
They're pretty wild. Let's just look at the compute costs alone.
Right.
By 2025, Anthropic estimates its compute cost will be around $6 billion.
Okay, $6 billion.
OpenAI projects $15 billion, but the long-term forecast is where the gap truly becomes a chasm. By 2028, Anthropic projects $27 billion in compute costs,
27.
while OpenAI projects a staggering $111 billion.
111 billion. When you put that number in perspective, that figure is larger than the GDP of dozens of countries.
It is. Is that level of spending simply necessary for pursuing AGI, or does it signal some underlying inefficiency in OpenAI's strategy?
It's likely a mix of both, but I think it's mostly strategic posture. OpenAI is chasing sheer scale and massive product breadth. ChatGPT, dedicated research, their supercomputing project Atlas, massive foundational model training. All of this requires aggressive scaling, and they've historically relied almost solely on NVIDIA hardware.
And that reliance is key to Anthropic's projected efficiency, right?
It is. It absolutely is. Anthropic is pursuing strategic diversification. They're using chips from Amazon, NVIDIA, and Google for specialized tasks.
So they're optimizing.
This multi-vendor approach lets them optimize workload costs and avoid being logged into the pricing of a single provider. And this efficiency is reflected in their business model. Anthropic is hyper-focused on enterprise, expecting 80% of their revenue to come from their API.
And they're projecting profitability much sooner.
Exactly. They expect to be cash flow positive by 2027, with a projected revenue of $70 billion by 2028.
Meanwhile, OpenAI is aiming higher on revenue $100 billion by 2028. But that scale and breadth means they're sacrificing near-term profitability.
It comes at a cost. They aren't projected to be cash flow positive until 2030, which really just highlights the high-stakes gamble they're taking. They're betting on achieving full generalized intelligence quickly enough to justify that burn rate.
It's a fundamental strategic difference, then.
Disciplined efficiency versus massive high-risk scale.
That sets the stage perfectly for the other equally critical strategic moves happening this week. Let's shift our focus to the quickfire updates.
Okay, first up, we've seen major strategic groundwork being laid in the healthcare sector. OpenAI is reportedly planning a major expansion into consumer health apps.
An AI personal health assistant.
Exactly. And they've already established credibility with their health benchmark, a comprehensive diagnostic toolset they developed with 262 practicing physicians. It signals a very serious regulated push into that field.
And for those of you interested in accessing this private AI economy, Robinhood is finding a new way to allow indirect retail exposure.
Oh, this is interesting.
They're considering offering shares in a closed-end fund designed to hold 4 to 5 best-in-class private AI startups. This would allow retail traders to buy in, though with some constraints on how quickly those shares can be sold.
In the startup world, Gamma, the anti-PowerPoint startup, raised $68 million.
Which pushed its valuation to what?
$2.1 billion. And that valuation is underpinned by some really strong traction, a reported $100 million in annual recurring revenue.
Media companies are also leveraging their archives. Time magazine launched an AI agent that lets users query and generate custom text and audio briefs directly from its huge 102-year-old archive.
And we saw a high-profile talent departure from Intel. They lost their CTO and AI chief, Sachin Kadi, who has moved over to OpenAI. That just highlights the continuing talent migration in the industry.
And finally, a massive investment round in legal tech. Clio, which is a legal AI company that provides tools for case management, research, workflow automation.
A huge player.
They raised $500 million in Series G funding, securing a $5 billion valuation.
And to briefly spotlight just a few essential new tools we're tracking for you. We've seen the rise of Replit, which now lets you build AI apps with over 300 model integrations without needing external API keys.
Which is a big deal for developers.
It is. There's also Moondream, designed for real-time video analysis, which allows models to interpret dynamic visual information instantaneously.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've covered a massive territory today. The industry is focusing on two sort of related cognitive challenges: spatial intelligence, as championed by Dr. Lee,
Bridging the gap between language and physical reality.
and structured reasoning, where GPT-5 achieved a clear, measurable advance in logic.
But these breakthroughs are underpinned by massive financial choices. I mean, the market is clearly dividing between those prioritizing high-risk, high-reward, scale like OpenAI's $111 billion projection, and those focused on immediate efficiency and enterprise stability, like Anthropic.
You know, the common denominator across all these stories is the pursuit of intelligence that can operate seamlessly between abstract thought and the physical world.
Right.
So if GPT-5 shows us the current limits of purely structured deduction, and the cost models show the limits of current scaling, the next critical thing for you to watch is just how fast the industry can synthesize physics data.
Absolutely. The ultimate strategic convergence is this. The cost of achieving true AGI hinges on achieving the efficiency of Anthropic, combined with the comprehensive world understanding that Dr. Lai is demanding. The biggest question isn't whether AI can describe the universe, but whether it can affordably and effectively model the physics of its own movements.
A truly strategic question to consider. If you found this deep dive useful, and you want to stay well-informed quickly without drowning in the news cycle, make sure you follow the show and share this with anyone else who needs a shortcut to the biggest moves in AI this week.
We'll be back soon with more insights.